they take days off work to come in. Sometimes they'll book a flight and travel in and pay for a hotel for a small tattoo. When they're paying for your time, they get your attention, period.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Today's guest is someone I've been real excited to talk to, someone that I have a lot of respect for, both for just as a business leader and also really their creative output is unbelievable. So Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right. So for the uninitiated, for the people who wouldn't know, please tell us, who are you and what do you do?
My name is Ryan Gagne. I am a father, husband, and tattooer of 15 years. And I've owned my own business for about 5 now.
Heck yeah. Awesome. All right. There's a lot I want to unpack about this, but I want to start with something simple, like people who maybe, people who get tattooed, people who don't get tattooed, anyone who's not like an insider within the industry might be like, leadership and tattoos, like, how does that work? So how is like, what's the purpose or the real need for leadership within the tattoo industry?
Well, I think it's more of like a kind of a mentorship. It seems like without it, there's a lot of blind leading the blind. And in this field where it is permanent, I mean, there's a lot of people messing some people up, right? And they just don't have the guidance. They don't have the, information available to them. It's a lot of young tattooers kind of flying blind and just trying to make it up as they go. And hopefully it works. And most of the time it doesn't. But I think a lot more people would be doing better tattoos if they had somebody there next to them answering those questions. And not only as far as the technical aspect, but as far as like being a tattooer, talking to customers as well.
Yeah. Well, and also with a lot of industries, there's also been like a big spotlight on how women and marginalized people within the industry are treated. And so like, not just in tattooing, everywhere. And I would imagine, as being someone who's a business owner, you've probably got something you want to add in on that as well from a leadership perspective.
Yeah. I mean, like the shops that I've owned, I've always had women tattooers working with me. And I always find that they're great to be around, especially as far as like a customer service perspective and a woman's perspective. I mean, it's very easy to be in a tattoo shop and it's intimidating because it's all dominated by men. And there's that softness to it, like when you work with a woman, and they can make certain customers feel a lot more at ease. It was great having my wife in my shop when we opened our first place. Because even when there's a spot that may be a little uncomfortable for a woman where they have to move their bra or shirt because it's ribs, whatever the case may be, my wife's right there sitting, there's, she's making sure everything's safe. She's making sure everything's comfortable. Like, there's a lot in the tattoo world that is a lot more difficult in women than I think it should be right now. And showing them that you have their backs, I think, is extremely important. There's a lot of vulnerability in the tattoo shop on the customer side and our side. But if something goes awry or whatever the case, they made you feel uncomfortable, making sure that you show that you have their back and you're a voice for them as well, I think is extremely important. Too many tattooers are being awfully quiet right now with a lot of things going on, which I don't agree with.
Yeah. I'm real interested in your take too about like, so I like what you said about kind of like it can be male dominated. I remember many years ago when I was like getting tons of tattoos, I was really getting like almost every week I was in a shop getting tattooed, really feeling like it's a real like man cave type environment. And and part of that can be nice because you're just like, yeah, I'm here with the boys, like I'm hanging out. And other times it's like, I don't know, like this is pretty like lame because it's just it's a bunch of dudes being dudes.
Yeah.
Within that, like, how do you go about tone setting? So like, like a shop has a feel and kind of a culture around it. Like, how do you approach that as a professional?
For me, it's all about customer service, period.
Mm-hmm.
Tattooing is customer service in its purest form. I mean, you're giving people what they want, they're paying for what they want, and they're the ones who have to live with it. Making sure that the environment is somewhere that they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Men, women, anybody, really.
Mm-hmm.
The comfortability is extremely important to me. But, you walk into some places, and like I said, it's pretty intimidating sometimes. And it's a boys' club, and there's guys, and they're, you know, talking about their escapades on the weekend and whatever the
Yeah.
case may be. Don't get me wrong, like that's all in good fun, but there's some
Mm-hmm.
people who don't want to sit there and listen to that.
Yeah.
That's, it's not an appropriate place. Like, yeah, this is a great job, but this is still a job.
Yeah.
You still have to provide a service and a product to somebody. And I think the experience is a massive part of that. And if they're
Yeah.
sitting there uncomfortable because of how the men are speaking about certain groups of people, it's not good for anybody.
Totally, man. And again, for people, let's say maybe from the corporate world who are listening, who aren't used to that, like, a lot of tattoo shops are like open spaces where there's multiple seats and, kind of in like line of sight of each other. And I know I've been getting tattooed and I've been a part of conversations where I'm like, you know what, that probably wasn't that cool for other people to hear. But on the flip
Yeah.
side, I've definitely been in shops. Definitely been getting tattooed and been like, damn, I do not want to be hearing the story that person's telling.
Yeah.
And it's an odd space because it's almost like, I think it's very easy to fall into that thing of like, I don't want to be the person that complains because I
Yeah.
don't want to look uncool in this like kind of like outsider thing that's got like kind of a bit of a high cool factor, which then creates the gateway for all sorts of like terrible stuff to happen because people are already
Yeah.
like, I don't want to look like a lame person. So people
Yeah.
start holding back what they think.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing about the open concept tattoo shops is, I mean, it's something I've tried to focus on through the years is the experience of my customer. And it's a very one-on-one thing. And
Mm-hmm.
while I can control what happens with them in an open space, you can't control what the tattooer next to you is going to say. And,
Yeah.
it could a lot of contention through my career has been through those aspects where it's like, I've done everything I can to give this person an amazing experience. But then this guy comes in and basically fucks it all up. And there's no way coming back from that because they're not going to remember the effort that I put in. They're going to remember that awful conversation they didn't want to hear, or you don't know what's happened in their past of their life and whether people are being sensitive to it or not. And it's those cases that they're not, that it just ruins it for everybody.
Yeah.
There's no coming back from stuff like that.
Well, and so something that's always stood out for me to me about you, but also that I know well from mutual friends that have talked about you professionally, is you take tattooing and like you take the art of tattooing seriously, the experience of tattooing seriously, and the business of tattooing seriously. Like you're very serious about your profession. I find that interesting as there's been a lot of people I've met in the tattoo world who are kind of like they're like quite adolescent about it. It's like a cash in hand business. They're buying
Yeah.
all sorts of extravagant things. They're party animals, and not all of them, but I've met enough tattoo artists that are kind of like they act like adolescents who are very
Right.
talented. Versus I've met very few who are just really serious business people, and you're one of those people I'd put in that like you're quite serious about it.
Oh,
Have you
thank you.
always been? Well, have you always been like that, or is that something you grew into?
It's always been like that. Tattooing, I didn't seek out tattooing, it found me. And
Mm-hmm.
it kind of was one of those moments of realization where it was, you know, this shit's forever. Like
Mm-hmm.
I got to take this serious. I couldn't draw at the time. So it's like, okay, I got to sit down and figure out how to draw.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't a joke. And, I've always kind of looked at it that way, whatever shop I was in at the time. There was one shop I was in where it was kind of a party shop and I was the only one painting and, working after hours and doing these things. Like it wasn't their priority, which is fine. But for me, nothing else mattered.
Yeah.
It was get better and try not to be lumped into this category of new tattooers, so to speak. There was a lot of bad talk about new tattooers and not a lot of positive thinking with them. And that was basically my entire motivation.
Mm-hmm.
It was to take it serious because it seemed like newer tattooers weren't taken serious because they wanted to party and it was, it's this rock star lifestyle, just drawing people go to the bar and hang out.
Yeah.
But it's just not how it is. I take it extremely serious, whether it's every single person who comes into my shop and how it affects, my income at home with my family and how I can support them. Life's not a party all the time. You
Hmm.
know, there's little grace periods like that. It's all good and fine. But at the end of the day, like, it's still your job. And are you proud of the work you put in that day when it comes down to it? And for 15 years, that's how I've looked at it, is I
Oh
want to
yeah,
be able to
man.
put my head on the pillow and feel proud of what I did.
Oh yeah. So you said that it found you. So tell us about your like entry story into this becoming your career.
Yeah, so I had no interest in tattooing whatsoever. It
Uh,
wasn't even on my radar. I got my first tattoo when I was 18. After a night of partying, we all woke up and it's like, let's go to get tattooed. Called the first shop that would take walk-ins, and uh, there was no tattooing in my family. I was always interested in it, but not as a job. Um, and me and my wife, we've been together a really long time. We got together when we were kids, and
mhm,
she basically got into a shop doing counter help. And she had mentioned I wanted to do something along the lines of, working in a tattoo shop. And she got me in. I did a few things here and there for a couple of years. And then just one day I got offered an apprenticeship. It was a quiet, slow day. We're sitting there and the boss just looks at me and says, "Do you want to learn how to tattoo?" And I kind of thought about it for a second. Sure, why not? Like, what else am I going to do type thing. And that was it. It was kind of just feet right in. She wanted me to start tattooing customers right away, and it was gnarly at first, but took a long time to kind of figure it out.
well, yeah, I was gonna say from there, from that starting point, from that first day, how long did it take for you to feel like, okay, actually, I know what I'm doing. I'm doing this well.
I still don't feel like that. Yeah, no, it still feels like I'm pulling it out of my ass every day, but I'm definitely more confident with it. Like, um, I mean, there's not a single tattoo I look at the end of the day when I'm about to post it on the internet and
Mhm,
rip it apart and make myself feel bad about it. Like, I could have
mhm,
done this better. I could have done this better. But, realizing like this is the best I can do right now, it really helped me a lot. But it still doesn't feel like you know exactly what's going on. A little more
mhm,
confidence, but it's different for every single design, every single
mhm,
customer that comes in. Everything changes. Once you think you have it figured out, you
mhm.
get thrown a curveball, and it's like, oh shit, now what?
Yeah. So
But
how long after that before you opened your own shop?
so when I started learning how to tattoo there, she made me a promise to not open my own business for 10 years.
Mhm,
And I mean, once we left that shop, the shop didn't survive for very much longer after that. And
mhm,
she quit tattooing and everything. But I've always felt like that was something I had to keep, and so I waited 10 years.
mhm.
Um, and I pretty much opened the shop just I think 3 weeks shy of my 10-year tattoo anniversary.
Oh yeah, and that was on Vancouver Island, right?
That was on Vancouver Island in a little town called Parksville.
Okay. And so you'd never been a boss up to that point in your entire life.
No, never.
So what was it like to suddenly like have your own thing and actually start having to bring on employees and learn how to be like a boss, an employer, and a business person?
Yeah, so a big decision for me for opening my own shop was not having any control over the situations. I've worked in quite a few, and there was always things that uh, I really did not agree with
Mhm,
when it came to how the business was run, how customers were treated. But
mhm,
it being their business, there was no say, there was no control.
mhm,
It wasn't even encouraged to voice your opinion about how to make things better.
mhm,
Uh, Through the years, I had always kind of taken almost upon myself to uh, take on more responsibility than what was asked of me, because I
mhm,
always I always looked at it as like, as a whole, as a group, as a family. Like, if we're all winning, that's
mhm.
great. Like,
Yeah.
if I can do one small thing to make everything else better, that's great. But a lot of shop owners didn't like that. So that was one aspect that when I opened my business that I was really striving for is, yes, this is my shop, but is there something you think I could be doing differently,
Mhm,
to make this better for everybody who
mhm,
comes through the door? And I think some people who worked with me were very caught off by that because they hadn't really experienced that before. I wanted to make sure it was very clear that I'm not a babysitter. You're an adult. Tattooing
mhm,
is a great job where we can do it anywhere in the world.
mhm,
And if you want to go and travel, I encourage it. If you want to go guest spot, do conventions, go. And there was all these aspects that I really wanted to be the shop owner that I never got to work for when
mhm.
I was coming up. They made it very clear that you have one job, and you're here to tattoo and you're here to put money in my pocket. Well, to me there's a lot more than that. you know, and I've been very lucky. I've had 3 people who have worked with me that I've, it's been perfect. It couldn't have been a better fit.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so is there anything that you learned about like the business side of it after starting a business where you can look back and be like, oh, I didn't like it when I wasn't running a business, but now that I am running a business, I actually understand why they were doing that?
Um, no, there's there I that was a big thing for me is I never understood why they were doing things the way they did them. It
Mm-hmm.
didn't make any sense to me. Um, there to me there was no downfalls to treating people better or keeping certain conversations out of the tattoo shop. Um, yeah, there wasn't a ton. It once I opened my own place, it was full control. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is okay and this is not. I'm not much of a gray area person. It's very
Mm-hmm.
black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so having that control to be able to say yes or no to
Mm-hmm.
certain things, that was super important. But more than anything that I learned from working with these other tattoo shops was what not to do. Honestly,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Like, can I give you an example about myself?
yeah, absolutely,
So the last company I worked at before starting my own, I was like, and my whole career, I've always been like, oh, I can't believe they're doing this. They should do it like that, blah, blah, blah. And I
yeah,
always like was a dude with like a lot of opinions, but very little like inside knowledge based on experience. And then when I started Cadence, I was like, I'm going to start a different company than my last one. Like, I fundamentally disagree with everything about how they did it. And I set up like a radically different business. And
right,
right off the bat, it was very successful. But throughout the years, I've been like, okay, now I understand why they had this policy or why they did this or why they did that. And some of them are just like super minor things like hiring practices, but some of them are like things that were like tentpole issues that I had with the company. I'm like, I actually get why they did this now that I own a business. And it's been like humbling for me in a sense where I'm like, oh, anyone can have an opinion about what's right or wrong until everything rests on their shoulders and they have to build a business that feeds their family and that like
yeah,
other people depend on. So it's a real change for me. So it's interesting for me. I always ask this question of anyone who owns a business when they were already working within an industry and hadn't previously owned a business. So on your end though, there's nothing really that stood out. It's like the stuff that I had issues with still makes sense for me to not do now.
absolutely. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like I would just go home upset because of certain things that happened, and it was like the reason I was upset is this didn't need to happen.
Yeah.
And uh, yeah, I mean, I think the whole boys club tattoo thing is played out. It's done. Get rid of
Mm-hmm.
it. I think there's a lot of the misogynistic views in tattooing. I think it's done, played out. Get rid of it. I don't agree with it, and
Yeah.
I don't think it belongs in a tattoo shop. And
Mm-hmm.
from my experience working in a lot of shops, that's just what it was.
Yeah.
I want to stay as far away from that stuff as possible. So you know there's not a whole lot I could see from these businesses that I saw. Okay, well, I can see why they did it that way because the things that I would get upset about don't need to be that way.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense. So you'd mentioned your family before. Do you mind if I ask a couple questions on that front?
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So I know you're a family person, a
Yeah.
wife, and two twins. Or you twins? Is that correct?
Yeah. Identical twin girls. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So how has that becoming a father and having a family? How has that changed the way that you tattoo, that you interact with business, how you lead, or has it at all?
Oh, absolutely. It's changed everything for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I from the first 10 years of my tattoo career, it was all consuming. It's all that mattered. And thankfully, my wife is very understanding and supportive of that. But once my kids showed up, it was instant. It tattooing doesn't matter. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter in the grand scheme of my life. Being with them and seeing them develop and encouraging them and helping them is all that matters. Now, while I still have to work and I still love what I do and I'm still lucky to do what I do,
Mm-hmm.
I don't prioritize tattooing in the slightest anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I've made extreme changes to make sure that it won't take away from my time with my kids. And so when I'm with them, I'm extremely present. Um, but tattooing, it was everything. It still is, but it's a very different lens I'm looking at it now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's all I ever wanted to do. Once I got into it, was learn how to paint flash and learn about needles and ink and machines. And um, there's always going to be time for that. But the time with my kids, it seems, people always said before I had kids, oh, it goes by fast. I thought that was just some thing you say when you have kids and all of a sudden you're a parent, but it goes by fast, man.
Mm.
Too fast. So I'm trying to separate those two as much as possible so they don't take away from each other.
Yeah. And again, so for me, having a business that I own, people would be like, you can make your own schedule. You've got so much time. It's like, no, like I got to radically schedule everything. I have to bust my ass so
Yeah.
that I have free time. It's actually much harder. So how do you make space for family when you have such like a demanding professional life?
So for me, it was being too available for customers all the time.
Mhm.
Um, they would email at midnight and, I'd see the phone light up and I'd just answer them right away and stuff like that. But so what we've done recently is my wife has taken over my schedule and my emails.
Mm.
She has a lot of experience in retail management. And so she used to have like 60 to 80 employees under her. So doing my schedule is easy. She does it while she's hanging out with the kids.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But, just that small thing of her taking over my emails has made such a huge difference because,
Mhm.
I'm not sitting on my phone when I'm with my kids. I'm present with them,
Mhm.
and staying within our shop hours as well, like, uh, you know, people emailing at midnight and sending a follow-up email at 9 a.m. because they haven't got a
Mhm.
response yet. That doesn't happen anymore, which is
Yeah.
nice. She's a lot more firm. I think I'm a little bit of a people pleaser. So
Mhm.
her taking over emails has been crucial in my time at home being really focused.
Yeah. All right. Let's go back to the story though. So you had your first shop on the island. What was the shop called?
Parksville Tattoo.
Okay. Um, but then you moved to Calgary and you actually worked at someone else's shop for a while. One of my best friends, someone I grew up with, Scott at Eternal Image. So what was it like making that shift where you've gone from being the boss and you can really set the kind of culture that you want
Yeah.
into going and working in someone else's shop again?
Yeah, so the move was initiated by one of my kids has some ongoing medical stuff, so it was just time to come back home to Calgary,
Yeah.
and because of what was going on, I knew it probably wasn't a good time to have my own shop again and just
Mhm.
focus on family while still needing to work. So I had talked to Scott about possibly working there with them, and one thing, I'm extremely honest. So me and
Mhm.
Scott sat down, and I told him like, look. Um, I'm going to have my own shop one day. I don't know how long I'm going to be around for.
Mhm.
I'd love to work with you in the interim and see what happens. And but I want to put this all out there so there's no questions, there's no confusion when the time comes, if the time comes. And
Mhm.
Scott's amazing. I mean, hands down, one of the best people I've ever worked for in a tattoo shop in my career. And he was very understanding, very supportive of it, and he made a space for me and allowed me to create my own schedule, and which was it was very hard for me going from a shop owner back to somewhat of a worker bee.
Mhm.
But he made that process very easy, and he was very understanding of it. And honestly, working with Scott was a dream come true.
Mhm.
As soon as I started tattooing, he was always, one of those guys that you looked up to, and being
Mhm.
able to stand there and watch him tattoo and see how he deals with customers and see how he approaches certain aspects of tattooing. Man, I learned a lot in that year working there.
Yeah, Scott's an interesting cat because, like, again, my experience within the tattoo world is fairly minimal outside of just getting tattooed and then knowing some people. But it's like these kind of dichotomies of like serious artist slash shop owners, like serious business people versus kind
Hmm.
of like party animal maniacs,
Yeah.
like kind of like little boys who like act like wild people or like, adolescents
Yeah.
basically. And Scott, ever since we were young, was like an old man. He was like a like very
Yeah.
serious, like kind of like old man, and has gone on to run a cool business. Do you think you could have worked for someone out, like gone to could you have gone into being a worker bee in a different kind of an environment? Or did it have to be something like Scott?
It had to be something like Scott's. Yeah, it
Mhm.
had to be. I mean, I've been doing it long enough where there's certain things that once they start affecting me negatively, I can't let go.
Mhm.
And when you try to talk about them to certain shop owners or business owners, they don't really care. They don't want to hear it, and they don't because they don't want to make any changes.
Yeah.
Scott's not like that. You can talk to him openly and honestly, and if there's something he's able to do for you to help you be more comfortable, he'll do it.
Yeah.
I think that's what separates him from a lot of other tattoo shop owners.
Yeah.
With that being said, he also keeps family and business the same way as I do. So it was very easy to relate to Scott. I didn't know him super well before working with him. Um, so I wasn't sure how it was going to go, honestly.
Mhm.
I was just happy to be able to be in that shop, in that environment. But the more we hung out and the more we kind of talked during tattooing, we look at things very, very similar, and with a
Yeah.
very critical eye as well, which
Yeah.
I think is important.
Oh, so with that saying, like, tell us about the new shop now, or the shop that you've recently started.
Yeah. So in the end of 2020, I'd say January 2021, me and my wife, we opened a new tattoo shop here in Calgary called Stronghold Tattoo.
Mhm.
um, yeah, a main thing is comfortability and customer service. That's
Yeah.
it. I don't like to be around a whole lot of bullshit. This is my happy
Mhm.
place away from home. Like if I have to be
Mhm.
away from home, this is where I want to be, and I don't need anything in here disrupting that. So I
Yeah.
was in here about a year by myself, working, trying to find
Mhm.
the right person to join me. And I tried out probably about 5 or 6 different people and finally
Mhm.
have someone lined up. She's been here since April and she's been amazing.
Hell
So,
yeah. So what are the ingredients of having, and let's not just talk about tattooing, but like from your perspective, what are the ingredients of having like a business that can be that kind of happy place, home away from home, that if you have to work, you'd love to be there?
for me, it's the environment, like
Mhm.
the walls are filled with things I love.
Mhm.
I've been collecting tattoo stuff for 15 years now, and just being able to look at and see at these things and, keep it interesting for the eye. So when a customer
Mhm.
comes in, they're excited to talk about it. And because I'm excited about it, I want to talk about it.
Yeah.
If it's my home away from home, and I'm very particular about how things are arranged, and I want to be in here. I don't want anything
Mhm.
impeding on that. And
Yeah.
uh, it was very difficult because there were some shops that as soon as you go into, they felt uncomfortable. Maybe
Yeah.
not for the customer, but even working there, it kind of
Mhm.
felt uncomfortable. Like I always try to develop the shop as a place I want to be at if I'm not home.
Yeah. Yeah.
If yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but
It totally answers the question. But so if you were to say, like, what are the elements of a strong tattoo shop? Like a tattoo shop where anyone would feel proud to work at it?
E- that's so hard to say because so many shops are so different, and it's all based on
Mhm.
the comfortability of a customer, right? There's
Oh,
some
yeah.
customers that want that really quiet experience where
Mhm.
it's more of a spa than anything, and there's some
Yeah.
there's some customers that come in and they want to pick something off the wall, and some shops just don't have that anymore. So it's
Yeah.
just totally based on uh, what you think a nice tattoo shop would be. For me, I love
Yeah.
seeing the designs on the wall. It's, the first time walking into a tattoo shop and seeing the flash and getting that feeling, that's the feeling I want in here for certain people. But
Yeah.
there's so many
Well,
different varieties, and so there's no right or wrong way to do a tattoo shop these days anymore, I don't think. It's just all
mhm.
individual.
Yeah. Um, so we talked earlier on about like the importance of mentorship, and there's something I wanted to bring up, and we can dip into it or not dip into it.
Yeah.
It's totally your call. You had mentioned in our lead up that you live with autism.
Yes. Yeah. That's
S-
very recently fully diagnosed. Yeah.
All right. So if you're thinking about mentorship and developing people, so how do how does someone in your industry create the right kind of mentoring environment where all sorts of different kinds of people with different kinds of needs can come in and be successful? What are the like that key ingredients of mentorship?
Yeah. So I think being available is a massive part of it.
Mhm.
If there's a young tattooer who has some questions, I don't mind answering questions.
Mhm.
I don't want them to feel like I'm rushing through, like it's a waste of my time, and being available, and not only being available, but having. Now, this is a part on my thing is
Mhm.
having a detailed answer.
Mhm.
Like if you ask somebody, "Oh, why do you like those needles?" and they say, "I don't know, I just like them." To me, that's not an answer. um, I can go into these crazy in-depth explanations sometimes where it's like a runaway train and I can't stop. But that helps me when someone does
Mhm.
that.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
I've recently discovered that is part of my autism, but
Mhm.
when Katie here has a question, I have to make sure that I'm available, and it's not just a quick, oh well, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Availability is huge, and being very open with your information. There's a lot of gatekeeping in tattooing. A lot of
Yeah.
guys want to keep things close to the chest, and while don't get me wrong, there's some information that you're not going to get right away.
Mhm.
You almost have to, so to speak, earn it.
Mhm.
But simple things to make your life better, like I've struggled through this, I figured it out. Maybe it will work for you, maybe it won't, but at least you
Yeah.
have the information to use.
Yeah. So like going to gatekeeping, like is mentorship something that's welcome in the tattoo world? Like are people psyched to have mentors and seek it out? Or is it kind of like frowned upon and weird? Like people feel like, nah, I just want to do my own thing.
Yeah, it's weird. It's a very strange element of the tattoo world that I still don't fully understand. Where it's a lot of people, they'll shit on new tattooers, or there's a new guy, and they'll talk a lot of smack about him, but then they'll have 5 or 6 apprentices within 5 or 6 years. I
Mhm.
think the mentorship for a lot of tattooers is more of an ego boost.
Mhm.
Uh, Honestly, I think they'll take on an apprentice because they want to feel special, and they want to I don't think they're using it as like a continuum. We're all just in between guys. Tattooing will continue long after we're done with it. But I don't think they're looking at it as like, what are you leaving behind with that new person?
Mhm.
I think honestly, it's a big ego boost for people to just take on an apprenticeship and say, "Oh, I taught this guy how to tattoo."
Yeah.
I haven't taken on an apprentice myself yet. I don't think I've ever met the right person, but there's been little blips of helping younger tattooers here and there. Because I
Yeah.
remember when I was young, and so nervous to ask some stupid little question and wondering if they're going to get pissed that you're trying to steal their tricks or whatever.
Yeah.
But and then you'll meet a guy who'll give you that tiniest bit of information, and it means the world.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a whole lot of that going on anymore. I think there's a lot of stubborn old men, and I think there's a lot of bitter people. And instead of trying to help the younger generation, they just want to tell them to fuck off, so to speak.
Yeah. Do you mind if I share a story
Of
about myself?
course.
Um, so when I was putting together the Change record, I sent some tracks to a musician that I really look up to, and I said, "Hey, will you produce the record?" And they said no because I think it's like, they're not going to spend their time with my like rinky-dink hardcore record like all the way out
Yeah.
in Vancouver. But what they did do is they took notes on each track and they sent me notes on each track. And like I'm leaving the person's name out intentionally, A, because I'm not like trying to drop the name in here, but B,
Yeah.
oh, so I don't want other people to start hassling them for the same thing.
Yeah.
But they
Start
gave me
pulling
like
yours up.
totally. They gave me detailed notes. Like when I say detailed, just like a few lines on each track. And it was like getting like gold. Like I was like, I can't believe this person took that time.
Yeah.
And maybe for them it was like 10 minutes or 5 minutes, or maybe it was 15, whatever it was. But I literally took every single line, applied it to the record. It's a better record as a result of it. And it's like those little moments where like mentorship or helping other people develop doesn't have to be this crazy long process. It's just about your willingness to share your knowledge in a meaningful way with someone who
Yeah.
is receptive and wants your help.
Absolutely. Before I was too scared to ask questions. So
Mm,
what I would do is I'm extremely high detail focused person. So
yeah.
if I saw somebody have a little video on Instagram, I would analyze that video. Maybe there's something that's in that video that could change everything for me, whether it's a
Mm,
machine or a certain type of red or whatever the case may be.
mm,
These days, it doesn't seem like a lot of people are searching for that information. They just want the answer.
yeah.
So I think there's a lot of value in a little bit holding a little bit back and not giving everything.
Mhm.
But man, if you give somebody a tiny little piece of information, you can see it in their eyes how much they appreciate it.
Yeah.
Holding back everything is just not helpful.
Totally. And also like I want to capture that idea that you hit on. It's like being afraid to ask questions. Like when I sent that email to the dude who was asking to like to produce the record, I was like sweating. And it's like
Oh
I
yeah.
email like CEOs of like multi-million-dollar companies all day. And I'm like, "Meh." I'm
Yeah.
sending this dude this email and I'm like, excuse me, will you please produce my record? I'm like
Yeah.
hot and like getting weird.
Oh
But
yeah.
like you gotta have the willingness to ask questions. The worst thing someone's going to say is no. Like you got to ask questions
Yeah.
because if they say yes or give you a little bit of that thing, it could change your world.
Yeah, like a taste could change everything.
Yeah.
Uh, when I was coming up, there was a tattooer down in the States, and he was painting more flash than anybody I had been looking at, and he was
Mhm.
just crushing it. And he, in his posts, in his captions, he would say certain details, and it's like, okay, and so this is what I need to do for mine. If
Mhm.
this is the look I want. And so I'd take those little tips that he'd accidentally leave. And for a couple years, I was blowing all this money on all these supplies, trying to figure out the right thing to do and the right way to do it, so to speak. And it got to a point where I finally got the courage, and I sent him a message and just said, hey man, like I really want to do this the right way. Like, if you see anything in my work, I didn't ask him how to do it. I said, if you can see anything in my work that I should change, let me know. I'm a big boy, I can handle it. And he sent me, I wasn't expecting, he sent me this massive list of everything from the board and paper to paint on, to the brushes, to the how to tape it, how to cover it, all these things, which blew my mind. Like, thank you so much for sharing that information. But what I had found out was, through me looking at all these detailed little, uh, I guess like little breadcrumbs he was leaving, I was already doing everything. So it was really nice that he was able to share that information, and it was really nice
Mhm.
that I also discovered it for myself almost at the same time. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's certain tattooers that when you get that information from, it changes everything for you. Like just that
Totally.
little hint to make your life a little easier, whether it helps you or not. Just getting that information, it shouldn't be that hard.
Mhm. Yeah, and I love what you're saying about paying that level of attention. So like when I think of leadership and I think of like, business stuff, people get hired into roles for like, oh, I'm an engineer, like this person's like an expert engineer, or I'm a therapist, or I'm whatever it is.
Right.
But very rarely are people hired in kind of like mid-level jobs just based on their leadership. Maybe like senior level jobs. And it's not even that they're a good leader, it's just that the business unit or what they were leading was successful. It's like there's no like leadership like test basically.
Right.
Um I'm always real interested in people who are like detail oriented about they lead themselves, like they go out and learn things on their own, and they're like
Yeah.
really like curious, and they're really focused on it. Because to me that's like someone who can value value like self-starters, but also someone who's like willing to share their knowledge. And that willing to share your knowledge is because you had to fight for it so hard. You got to like dig it up yourself, and you want
Yeah.
other people to have it.
Yeah, I mean, it just shouldn't be that hard. It's like being a parent. Like whether if you didn't have the greatest childhood and you become a parent, and your goal is, well, I'm not going to make the same mistakes. And
Mhm.
it's the same thing with these young tattooers. Like, yes,
Mhm.
there is some information you should earn and seek out for yourself, and the pride you'll get from that is unmatched. That you figured that out,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to be that hard. you
Mhm.
know uh, it never made any sense to me keeping everything a secret.
Yeah.
And yeah, I, it blows my mind that that's still a thing. Yeah.
Um, so you'd mentioned earlier, like the diagnosis of autism is relatively new for you. So
Very, yeah.
what led you to go and seek that out?
So when we were in our first tattoo shop, it was me and my wife, and I had brought in somebody to work with me. We worked previously before, so he knew how I was and how I did things. And I had been running a little late to get supplies for the shop, and I ended up coming into the shop. And the moment I walked in, I looked at my wife and said, "Did you change the mop soap?" She's like, "There's no way you could know that." Like, but for me, it's everything is a high
Mhm.
detail that I focus on. And I noticed how the floor felt.
Mhm.
It felt different that day.
Mhm.
And so we're kind of joking around, and she had made a joke after my coworker had said, like, "I don't understand how you notice this stuff." And
Mhm.
she made what I thought was a joke at the time. Turns out it wasn't a joke. She said, "Well, it's because he's on the spectrum." So my wife
Mhm.
has known for a long time, and I played it off as a joke.
Mhm.
And once we had kids, I really noticed it starting to affect me in a negative way, change to my schedule or change to certain routines. And um, I noticed it started affecting my kids, as they're growing and as they're developing. Things aren't always going to stay the same way. Well, I need to figure out why I'm so uncomfortable with this. And after about 2 years of really diving in and looking into it, it's like, okay, I need to pull the trigger and talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about and see if this is a thing. And I wasn't going in looking for a strict diagnosis.
Mhm.
I was more so going in, okay, well, if this isn't it, what could it be, and how can I approach it and change my lifestyle in a way that's not going to inconvenience the people around me?
Mhm.
Because that was a big concern of mine. I didn't want to feel like a burden. And so once I finally spoke to somebody, it was confirmed, fully diagnosed autistic. And I've been trying to learn how that applies to my business and my family, especially, and how I
Mhm.
need to approach things. And it's not necessarily what I've discovered about myself is it's not a luxury of me being a shop owner. It's a necessity at
Mhm.
this point, and it's because of that.
Mhm.
I need the control over the environment. I need control over certain situations. But being diagnosed autistic was unbelievably overwhelming.
Mhm.
Reanalyzing every interaction I've ever had with coworkers, bosses, customers. I'm starting to finally, at 36 years of age now, trying to understand exactly why I've looked at things the way I have, and why
Mhm.
nobody else sees them that way either, which has always been
Yeah.
a struggle for me in
Yeah.
tattooing.
Yeah.
Um, but it's changed everything dramatically for the better. I think I have a little bit better understanding why I do the things the way I do.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, thank
So
God.
what have you learned? And then also, how has that changed anything in the way that you go about your business?
Um, honestly, I'm not 100% sure.
Mhm.
I'm not 100% sure. I've learned more things about myself and how I look at my business and why I
Mhm.
look at it the way I do.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm not exactly sure, to be honest, on that one, man.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
so what elements of autism do you think have helped your career?
Extreme focus to detail
Yeah.
and strict uh, uh, control over my schedule and how I approach things. And I think that benefits my customers the most because I'm
Mhm.
set up ready to go. When you come in, your drawing's done. That's always been rules I've had when you
Mhm.
work with me in my shop is,
Mhm.
drawings are done. You're ready to go.
Yeah.
It's time management. There's no reason you should be sitting there and drawing for another 2 hours while I sit there. You guys have had this plan for 2 months.
Yeah.
Things like that, which are great. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. I'm still learning a lot about the whole autistic side
Mhm.
of myself and how I run my business. So,
Mhm.
um, forgive me if there's no like clear answers to that because I'm still learning about it. It's still super new to
And
me.
oh, I love it. I love the vulnerability. Can I share something with you?
Absolutely.
So Monica, and then for those who've listened to the show a lot, Monica's my partner, and Monica and Ryan used to work together. When we were early relationship, Monica would be like, Ryan is the most professional tattoo artist I've ever known in my life. Like, he has everything done on time. His drawings are done on time. He meets people. He's like super good with clients. They come in. He's totally focused, gets the job done. They're done. It's just like, requires no management at all. You just have to play the role that a shop person would play in this space
Right.
to like make sure he's got his supplies and everything. And I remember coming in and getting tattooed at Eternal Image and kind of watching your process, because I'm in a chair. I got nothing to do but like bleed and like feel a lot of pain. So I'm like
Yeah.
trying to distract myself. I'm observing. And I remember this, like, your level of focus was like insane. You were doing this really cool tattoo on someone's back, or sorry, tiger tattoo on someone's back, and you were blazing through it, but unbelievable precision and super super focused, while also like really managing to like keep the person comfortable, and like they were doing a pretty painful tattoo.
Yeah.
Your approach definitely stood out to me. And what I had thought at the time, before we had ever had this conversation about living with autism, I just thought, oh, that guy's just like 100% in it as a complete focused pro. Like, he takes what he does ultra seriously. And I think
Yeah.
you do. And
Yeah.
it also sounds like autism played some part in that.
Yes. And for me, like in those situations, that's where my hyper focus comes in. And
Yeah.
that's where the customer service part of me comes in too, because I want everybody to have the same experience with me. And,
Mhm.
it was something I worked on for a very long time, that instead of sitting there really quiet, while doing their tattoo,
Yeah.
you may come across as somebody who's aggressive or kind of
Mm,
an asshole if you don't want to talk to the customer.
mhm,
So I've made a very conscious effort of like making sure to check in and, are you doing okay? Do you need any breaks? Do you need a stretch? You need to use the bathroom, anything like that. But
mhm.
it's all part of the job. I'm there to do a job. They're paying
Yeah.
me for a job. Tattoos, a lot of people think tattoos are very expensive. For me, it's a lot of time management as well. Like, these people work
Mhm.
hard for their money. They take off work sometimes to come in for these appointments. Like, there's no pussyfooting around. Do the
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
Um, and it's something my customers have voiced to me that they really appreciate. And it's something that I'm unwavering at. The drawing
Mhm.
has to be done. And then there's almost part of that, part of me too. Like, when they come in and make a last minute change, that's where my kind of autism kicks in. Is there's this instant panic.
Yeah.
I'm prepared, everything's under control. I've taken all the steps I need to do this, and all of a sudden someone throws me this curveball. Um, but I've always thought that that was just me doing the job, but it turns out it is part of my autism, where
Mhm.
it needs to be this way.
Right.
There's It's unforgiving, no compromise. It needs to
Mhm.
be this way. Everything else around me kind of disappears when I'm doing this tattoo for this person,
Mhm.
except that person,
Yeah.
which is, I'm learning, is part of the autism. Absolutely.
Yeah. How do you manage that piece of it though? So like you can be the boss, you can own a shop, you can have everything, have your drawings done, all of that kind of stuff. But human beings are human beings. Human beings
Yeah.
are like wonderful, great, considerate, inconsiderate. They fuck up, they do the right thing. So when there's that moment where that curveball gets thrown in, how do you handle it when that anxiety or that like no, it's got to be this way? How do you handle that as a professional?
Um, it, it, I'm still kind of working on that,
Mhm.
that side of it. Because you're right. I mean, it is human beings. Like, they want to flip flop. Some people are indecisive.
Mhm.
Um, I kind of try to take it case by case, depending on
Yeah.
the situation and the degree of it.
Mhm.
If I've drawn a back piece, if they want to move some leaves on a rose, I mean, that's really not that big of a deal. There's a reason I put them there. There's
Yeah.
always a reason behind everything I do. But, it's not a deal breaker to just take those out. But when it's a complete redraw, I'm still trying to figure out how to manage those feelings of anxiety and frustration, in those last minute moments. But uh, they very rarely happen because of the processes I take, and because those are the processes I need to do my job.
Yeah.
So it's very rare somebody comes in and throws a wrench in the spokes for me, which I'm
Yeah.
thankful for.
Well, and so much of the way that you approach this, like part of it is like living with autism, but part of it, like what you said, is like, hey, I got to take it seriously. Like this costs them money. They're taking time off. It's kind of a reversal of how I see a lot of people run their businesses as tattoo artists. And what I mean by that is like, are you familiar with the concept of servant leadership?
No.
So it's the idea that like someone could be the CEO, but they're like, oh no, 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 no. I am here to make you successful. Like I am here to serve the people. Although I'm the CEO, I'm here to serve. It's an inverted relationship. I'm here to serve everyone else.
Right.
And it's like it gets talked about a lot, like, oh, we believe in servant leadership. And it's like, then it's just like typical like hierarchy,
Yeah.
bullshit. But
Yeah.
conceptually, I like it. When you're talking about it, it sounds like kind of a servant leadership model. And what I mean by that is like, dude, I can't even tell you the amount of times I've gone in to get tattooed and the drawing's not done, and like someone
Yeah.
wants to get lunch, and it's like it's that thing, and it's always I tend to get tattooed by people I'm friends with, so I'm kind of I laugh about it. It's no big deal, and
Right.
not Scott, by the way, Scott, not you, but
Yeah.
um, there's an inherent power that's involved with being a tattoo artist. Like
Yeah.
you have tons of power. You have a very specialized thing that you're doing, especially if you're good and you're sought after. It's like a cool environment, so people don't want to look like a loser or a lame. Like I don't want to be the complainer. You have a
Yeah.
ton of power wrapped around you, and
Yeah.
instead, what you're saying is, no, I want to make this as efficient, effective, as good experience. To me,
Yeah.
it's a servant leadership model that you're applying.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. A lot of tattooers, it feels like when they're speaking to a customer, they're always speaking from a perspective of like they're doing them a favor, you
Right.
know. And the way I look at it is, fuck, I'm lucky that anybody wants to get tattooed by me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'm in a city with hundreds and hundreds of amazing tattooers, and they could have the pick of the litter,
Yeah.
and the fact that they chose me to do it, and that's how I can support my family, it means
Yeah.
everything to me.
Yeah.
Um, So, you know, and not only that, but the fact that they have a good experience and then they want to come back, or that they tell their friends about, you know, even if someone can lay down an amazing tattoo, that experience is what people talk about. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, most people don't know what a good tattoo is. Let's be honest. They're looking
Mm-hmm.
for an experience. And it's one of those things where I think as long as you're treating the customer well, you're putting it more so about them than yourselves. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of tattooers that are so worried about being an artist. I only
Mm-hmm.
do my designs. Well, they're the ones who have to live with it for the rest of their
Mm-hmm.
lives. Like,
Yeah.
why don't they get a say? Why don't they have a voice in this? Why are you drowning them out? It doesn't, that I don't agree with it.
Yeah. So, because this is like a pretty sharp contrast, I'm going to tell you a story about getting tattooed at a convention, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I was in California, and for a total other reason, and there was a tattoo convention where someone that I'm very good friends with was tattooing, and I had an unfinished piece that they were doing, and I was like, oh crap, hey, I hit them up, I'm like, yo, can I come get tattooed? They're like, yeah, for sure. So we go in, and I'm getting this back piece done, and it's this big Rock of Ages back piece, and this shit hurts. It
Oh yeah.
hurts. It's
Oh
horrible.
yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
and there's a ton of people there, and you're in a convention setting. So I've got like no shirt off in front of hundreds of people, and like people are looking and they're commenting. Fine. It's by nature not the kind of environment I want to get tattooed in. But the person that I was getting tattooed by, we don't live in the same city. It was just like crossover. We happen to be there. I'm gonna get it done. I'll never forget this, and I always bust my friend's butt about this. It's like I'm getting tattooed, and another tattoo artist comes over and is looking at the tattoo and is like, and no joke, this is actually the conversation was like, so I'm getting tattooed, and the other guy goes, wow, that's such an unassuming tattoo, man. It's really unassuming. And the guy who's tattooing me stops and is like, wow, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. And they just start chit chatting. I'm just there bleeding. Like I'm in total
Yeah.
pain. And I'm like, God, like, come on, come on. But I'm not saying anything. And they're just chit chatting back and forth. And, after like maybe 5 minutes, he's like, and I mean, literally 5 minutes, he's like,
Yeah.
all right, man, I'm going to get back to tattooing. And then he just starts tattooing again and then stops. He's like, really unassuming. Wow, thanks so much, man. And finally I sit up. I'm like, yo, I like get back to this. Start tattooing me right now.
Yeah.
So years later, like legitimate years later, I'm telling him this story and he's like, I did not do that. I'm like, you totally did that, man. And I'm like, I want to know, did you do it because I'm your friend? We've known each other forever. Were you just caught up in the moment? Or were you just like kind of like that tattoo culture? Like, like almost like the person you're tattooing is like, just, they're like furniture
They're just
in
a
that
piece of
sense.
meat. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, I want to say it's because you're my friend that I was that I disregarded
Yeah.
you that much, but I
Yeah.
don't know, man. I got to think about it. And the whole thing is like, man, everyone who gets tattooed loves getting tattooed. Like we love like the culture, but I think we could say that like the tattoo artist has a ton of power from like
Yeah.
how it looks, what your experience is, and you have just such a different approach. And I find it like really refreshing, but it also seems like there has been a sea change going on in the industry that is much more customer focused. Do you think that's because it's like it's because it's so much more competitive now, or is it because people actually are just taking that side of it more seriously?
I think with the development of like social media and stuff, there's no hiding behind a bad experience anymore. You know,
Mm,
like if you're going to be an asshole to customers, people are going to find out.
right.
Um, yeah. And I think customers, well, don't get me wrong. Like this isn't McDonald's. This isn't have it your way in 30 seconds or less.
Mm,
Um, they're a lot more open to saying what they want. And
mm,
I don't think it's in every situation. I think they're advocating for themselves a little bit more now because they see
mm,
the options that there are. You know, I always tell my customers, like, if you're uncomfortable in a shop within, 5 minutes, walk out, including mine. Like, if you
mm,
don't feel we're vibing good, get out, go somewhere
yeah,
else.
yeah,
Um, uh, I don't know about the customer service shift. I don't really visit a whole lot of tattoo shops anymore, but it
mhm,
seems that tattooers, thank God, are starting to take it a little bit more seriously when
mhm,
it comes to regards of what the customer actually wants out of
yeah,
this. Whether
yeah.
it be their tattoo design or their experience. It seems like it's a slow train that's moving, I think, but I think it's going in the right direction.
So around social media, it sounds like um, you've seen a benefit of that that being a part of the whole culture now, because it's like undeniably like most tattoo artists at this point are like putting stuff online. So
Yeah.
how have you found interacting with that?
Um, well, it's completely changed my look of tattoo shops
Mm,
entirely. Back in the day, it used to be like when you saw a nice tattoo, you'd ask them, "Oh, where'd you get that?" It was never who did it; it was where did you get it.
yeah, yeah.
And in growing up in Calgary, there was always three shops, always that people said, and
Mm,
it didn't matter who did it; it mattered where you got it from. So there was this
right,
like group. If you worked at this shop, you were one of those guys.
right.
You were going to stay busy. You're doing the right thing if you got hired there. With the development of social media, it seemed like it was more focused on the individual tattooer.
Mm, mhm.
Um, it wasn't shop pages. There are shop pages, but they don't have nearly the following or interaction that an individual artist from that shop would have based
Yeah.
on popularity or the skill of their work. But uh, I quickly realized, like, okay, tattoo shops, they don't need, like, the tattoo shops need tattooers, but
Mhm.
tattooers don't need the tattoo shops anymore. So that's
Wow.
where, that
Yeah.
that was a big thing for me. It was like, that's why there's so many private studios. That's why there's so many little collectives, and it's not so much about the whole anymore. It's about the
Yeah.
individual, and that's what social media did. Which it can be a good, and it has its pluses and minuses,
Mhm.
but that was a major shift I noticed. It
Yeah.
wasn't it. Nobody were talking about shops anymore. They were talking about individual tattooers. So that
Yeah.
was that
Well,
was a huge shift.
dude, that's super interesting. I never looked at it that way. I'm like, there's a contact point that I'd make on that is that when all of the music platforms started coming in, like iTunes, Spotify, all of that kind of stuff, there hit a point where bands realized, like, we don't actually need record labels anymore.
Yeah.
And there used to be kind of like you were saying, there were these like iconic record labels. Like, hey, if you're on this record label, that means you're at least someone I need to take seriously. I at least need to
Yeah.
check it out. And then it became like totally decentralized, where like everyone was just putting out their own music. And now it's actually started to be a shift again, where labels are actually starting to become important, like really important, because labels have stopped acting like record labels and almost more
Mhm.
like marketing and promotion companies, like,
Right.
or distro companies, like they've changed their business model. Do you think there's going to be a road path, like a path back to shops being super important, like labels are starting to become important again?
I think there's going to have to be a lot of work done on the shop owner's part for that to happen.
Mhm.
I think shop owners are starting to realize, like, what they're doing is it's not a good environment, and people would rather just go off and do a private studio.
Mhm.
Um, how you treat the people you work with, and the freedoms that you give them, especially in the tattoo world. Like I said, we can do this anywhere. Like, feeling like you're chained to a shop is not okay.
Yeah.
Um, there's got to be a lot of kind of looking in the mirror situations for a lot of shop owners, I think,
Mhm.
and realizing what they're doing probably isn't helping their business, and that's why they have such high turnover of tattooers, or why there's so many people going and starting their own thing or a private studio where they don't have to deal with that stuff. I
Yeah.
think it's possible, but it's tough to say that there's that many people that like to look at themselves in a critical mirror. You
Well,
know,
what stands out for me is like, record labels. So I've been on teeny little record labels, and I've been on record labels that are like almost like a major. And I've
right?
I've been like kind of in the in between. And nobody wanted to look at themselves in the mirror, and everybody was clinging on to the like, well, that's just how it's done kind of thing,
Yeah,
until they
yeah,
didn't. Until at
yeah,
one point bands were like, we don't need you anymore. And it
yeah.
was like such a sharp 180 of how they do business, like how they like how the actual mechanism of the music industry's changed so much. And it didn't happen overnight, but it did happen really quickly. Like within, like, let's say 5 to 10 years, the whole thing
Yeah,
switched over to almost where it's like it's so different now how it operates and how labels and I think there's still some old school stuff that goes on, but it's
of
quite a
course.
bit different. I wonder if it's going to get to a point where shops become so obsolete that people have to be like, it's whether or not I want to hold up the mirror doesn't matter. I have to do it if I want my business to survive.
Oh well, I think it'll get to that point. Honestly, I
Mm-hmm.
think it'll be they'll be forced into it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's been shops that had 12 tattooer turnover in a year, and or there's a massive coup of guys and they all leave at once. You
Yeah.
know, if you want to continue your business, you have to change.
Mhm.
You can't expect everybody to do things the old school way, which is ridiculous because most of these guys touting that ideology weren't even part of the old school. It's
Yeah.
just something they thought was cool and something they learned. But it, it's going to happen. But I think it's going to take a long time, because if there's one thing I know about tattooers is they don't want to be told what to do.
Hmm.
That's
Totally.
that's just it. They'd rather take their ego and well, no, this is how I do things, and fuck all of the rest of you. And uh, hopefully, but it'll be a very, very gradual shift, and I think it'll get worse before it gets better. Honestly, I don't think those mega shops, while there'll always be a few, it won't be like it used to be, where it was like you only went to that shop based on the name. You didn't even care who did your tattoo. I don't think that exists anymore with social media.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so going back to living with autism, I know because it's a relatively new diagnosis for you, and when I ask you a question like, I need to think about it. I don't have an answer for that. But if we took a step back, is there any advice that you would give to people living with autism if they're thinking about starting their own business, or actually, I'd say like, well, maybe advice you want to give about being a professional or starting your own business? Anything specific to living with autism?
I think especially with autism, like the need to understand what you need to do it, your job as effectively as possible.
Hmm.
Um, I need to have my own place, and it's all it. Autism is such a wide spectrum and such a personalized thing. It's so different for everybody, so it's very hard to relate to other people in the way they approach things in their businesses. But really taking a critical eye, like some, and taking the jump and trying to be your own boss for once,
Hmm.
I think is really important. Whether it works out or not, at least trying it. Um,
Hmm.
I've been trying to find online a lot of people who are business owners with autism,
Hmm.
and it seems it's a hard thing to do. Honestly, is find
Hmm.
those people and connect with them and relate to them, because it's so individualized.
Hmm.
Um, but if I had one piece of advice, is just do it.
Yeah.
Just start your little shop, start your little Etsy company, do something for you where you have every element of control over it, and you can
Hmm.
make the vision that you want.
Hmm.
Um, that's Man, I mean, outside of that, even if it doesn't work out, at least you did it, and
Yeah.
you can find out why it didn't work out. You
Yeah.
can hyper analyze all these little tiny details and see why it worked, what didn't, and what you need to do in the future. But for me, it was very obvious that I have to own my own business. I have to be my own boss.
Yeah.
There's just no way around it anymore. Sitting and working for somebody else, it doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
It's even great people. There's certain things, like whether I don't disagree how they run their business, but even in the micro situations, like you're ordering stuff from this supply company when you could be saving money by buying it from this place, or putting in an extra half hour of work and cutting things up instead of they come pre-cut for you. Like, why? To me, that wouldn't make any sense. Spending the extra money to do something like that.
Hmm.
um, so for me, having control over those elements is super, super important. um,
Yeah.
and I've learned that's because of my autism.
Yeah. Yeah.
But take
Um,
the jump, just fucking do it, be your own boss. Like, if it works, great. If it doesn't, whatever, but at least you'll know what you need to proceed to be successful in the future when it comes to your autism, because
yeah.
it's so different for everybody.
And I'd add into that, and certainly I don't live with autism, but I would suggest for anyone who has any needs, like any kind of special needs, to know how to do your job. It's know what you need to do, but then communicate that clearly and effectively to people.
Yes.
Um, Working with other people, whether it's just two people working together or like you're working in a huge company, I have found that if people are super clear in they really have truly done the work to figure out what they need to be successful. Like, hey, this is what I need to do a good job. And then they also clearly communicate that. Most people are willing to play ball to at least give it a shot, but you,
Absolutely.
you can't just know what you need. You have to share it with people.
Yes. So especially with me, when I, like Katie, our new girl, that we brought
Mhm.
on. She started with me back in April, like I said. I think we had 2 meetings where we sat down, and I always like to make it very clear. This is how I like to run my shop. This is how I
Mhm.
like things done. Some things are, there's no compromise.
Mhm.
Some things are flexible. I'm not
Mhm.
sure what they are. We'll get to it when we get to it. But I made sure to be extremely honest and lay out exactly how I do things. And I told her, like, I don't need you to give me an answer right now. In fact, I want you to sit with the decision and think about it and make sure it's the right thing for you. Because
Mhm.
once you come here, this is how we do things.
Mhm.
Um, and she really appreciated that, that blatant honesty. And it's something I continue to do. Like, there's a lot of growing pains when you bring somebody into your business, especially when you've been by yourself for a little over a year. Um,
Mhm.
those growing pains are expected, but once I discover them, it's very important for me to voice them right away,
Yeah.
whether I think it's important or not.
Mhm.
It's letting it sit and stew isn't healthy. It's not a good environment either. And I
Yeah.
made sure to tell her that applies to you as well. If there's something that you would like me to do differently, if there's something you want the shop to do as a whole to do differently that would help you do a better job, just say it. You're not going to hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, when they work for somebody, they don't want to say their honest opinion, whether they're happy or unhappy, honestly.
Yeah. But
So that
you, oh, go ahead.
no, that was an extremely crucial part of
Mhm.
all of my 2 shops that I've had
Mhm.
was honesty. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about feelings. Just say it, get it out there, and then we can approach it from a different kind of angle.
Yeah. But the approach that you're talking about, and I know this is true about you. The approach that you're talking about is something a lot of people will say. Like, very few people are going to be like, hey, listen, if you have an opinion, you want something different, don't tell me because I'm going to have a huge, like, passive aggressive meltdown about it and it's not going to
Yeah.
go good. So just, sit on it. Most people are going
Yeah.
to be like, oh, be honest. But it's interesting because for me, being both a therapist and then also being a business coach and then also a business owner, a lot of people want to feel that they're the kind of boss that can say that. And a
Yeah.
lot of people, once it's feedback they're comfortable with, they can play in that ballpark. But as soon as
Yeah.
it's that one thing that like, that makes me uncomfortable, they shut down the conversation. And I see
Yeah.
this all the time. So for me, it's like, it's better that people don't say it if they can't do it. And then only say it if you can walk it, basically. Like,
Yes. And
don't
that's
talk.
yeah, that is a huge problem I've had with tattooing in general.
Mhm. Mhm.
With my experience was there's a lot of people that talk a big game.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to action, there's a lot of silence. There's
Mhm.
all you can hear is crickets.
Mhm.
But I think standing behind your word and meaning what you say, coming from a kind and helpful place, has massive impact. Massive
Yeah.
impact. And,
Yeah.
with my girl that with Katie, who's been here, um, there's a couple little things like I'm learning tons from her
Yeah.
because she's being honest with me. And
Yeah.
shit, I didn't really look at it like that. And that helps me. Like
Mhm.
I don't want to sit in an echo chamber where everyone thinks I'm the best boss and this is the right way to do it. Like maybe there are better ways to do things.
Mhm.
You know, I can be a little strict when it comes to my one-on-one with customers. Like this is how I approach the tattoo. But outside of
Mhm.
that, like you know, honesty from all ends, I just think
Mhm.
is beneficial. I think burying
Yeah.
it deep down, it doesn't help anybody.
Well, what I find like super funny about this is like, I have a client that I work with who is like, said something recently that this is going to sound bizarre of how proud I was of them. Basically, the CEO said to one of their reports is, hey, listen, I'm super direct. I ruffle feathers. Sometimes I say things that sound mean. Sometimes I say things that are mean. This is
Yeah.
just who I am. I move really, really fast. I cut people off. I do these things. And it's not because I'm trying to hurt anyone's feelings. And I'm working on it, but I'm only going to be able to change so much. So if you want to work with me, you got to work with me knowing that not every opinion I want to hear, not every idea I want to explore. I want to
Yeah.
focus on these things, and you need to figure out my rhythm. Now, when
Yes.
they said that, it might sound strange that I was proud of them. I was proud of them because they weren't doing the, oh, all opinions are welcome and everything's
Yeah.
welcome. They were telling the truth about how they actually act, which I think is healthier because then someone can make an informed decision about whether or not they want to be in that space. And that making an informed decision is one of the most important things an employee can have. Is if your boss is actually open, cool, then you can make an informed decision. If your boss isn't open, cool, you can make an informed decision.
Mhm.
That's the like leaders should be honest about how they actually are rather than trying to paint this rosy picture of how they wish people would perceive them.
Yeah, I mean, I was guilty of that for a long time. I'm very open and honest, almost too direct of how I say things, and I've had to learn how to dial that back a little bit with people.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, that's the way I grow is honesty.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, there's no other way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't learn from pussyfooting around or sugarcoating it for everybody or telling everybody, oh, you're so amazing all the time. There's always room for improvement, and I need to be around people who view it the same way.
Right.
Everyone I've had, whether it's a drawing critique or I think you should have tried this differently, like everyone looks at that criticism equally as it's not, we're trying to help, not hinder, right?
Yeah.
I'm not coming over to tell you you suck to make you feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm genuinely coming from a place of wanting to help.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't want somebody doing that with me. So it's not something I've been able to do with other people, like kind of sugarcoat things. But it's extremely important to me that I would never ask or do of other people what I wouldn't do myself first.
Yeah.
Unbelievably important.
So you mentioned a few times the kind of like non-negotiables about
Yeah.
how you run your shop. So what are some of the non-negotiables for you?
Non-negotiables are you're ready and you're set up when they walk in the door. Your drawing is ready. You have done your consult. You have done all the prep work. All they have to do is sign the paperwork, sit down, stencil, get to tattoo, period.
Mm-hmm.
During that time, I don't, this is where me and a lot of other tattooers don't really agree with. And this is how I apply my one-on-ones. So keep that in mind is when we take breaks, we're breaking for less than 5 minutes. If that's what you need just to get a quick bite in you, I don't like to waste a whole lot of time. I don't agree in stopping to have a 45-minute lunch. I've been in that situation. And when you come back from the break, that tattoo fucking hurts from sitting there and getting back into it. It's the worst. So it's just not, I don't do that. I don't eat during the day when I'm working. I don't eat a single thing while I'm working because it takes away time from from tattooing that customer. A big thing is valuing each other's time and respecting that time. They're, like I said, they take days off work to come in. Sometimes they'll book a flight and travel in and pay for a hotel for a small tattoo. When they're paying for your time, they get your attention, period. Those are some of the things but also with Katie, I try to tell her you are also your own boss. I want you to set your schedule. And if you don't have any customers in and you don't want to come into the shop, stay home, take the day. I'm not trying to make you do things you don't want to do. You're a grown adult, but there's certain rules that when you are here, that they're unwavering, and being set up and ready for that customer and respecting their time is number one for me.
Hell yeah, man. I absolutely love that. So tell us about your consultation process, because I know it's a pretty in-depth process.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of people find it in depth. To me, it makes sense. When I talk to people, so I've cut down doing consults every single day because it takes away. I found when I was booking consults, it was always at the end of my day, and it came close to me missing bed and bath time with my girls at home. So we've condensed it where I take a day off. Every Thursday during the week, I have consultations with people, and they're scheduled time. So there's no other tattooing happening. There's no other distractions. Nobody else is here. It's one-on-one. When I talk to people, they'll give you the general idea, and that's my time to really focus and kind of get a read on exactly what they're looking for. People who say, do whatever you want, just do your thing. The way my brain works, I don't know what that means. And so I need to talk to these people and find out, okay, well, how open are you? If they say, I want a panther, do whatever you want. Okay, well, let's do it pink. They may say, well, maybe not pink. Okay, well, do whatever you want. Doesn't apply then. So what exactly do you mean by that? I'm a very literal person. I have a hard time reading between the lines. So when people are giving me descriptive words like, I want it whimsical and flowing, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
It's a different interpretation for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of having that panic when I'm doing the drawing and trying to interpret the conversation, that's all been done through in the consultation. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I don't have any questions.
Mm-hmm.
The customer shouldn't have any questions. Like, I wonder what he's going to do with my drawing. I am very clear what I'm going to do with it. I'll make suggestions. You either take them or you don't. That's great. You won't show up to have your tattoo have anything in it we did not talk about. That is
Yeah.
extremely important to me. I don't want to last minute surprise somebody with something and feel like I pressured them into doing something they maybe didn't want to do. So
Yeah.
that consultation period is extremely important for me to understand what they're wanting and to do my job properly and efficiently. You know, if I'm going to bang out a drawing, I don't want to sit there and have to email them 30 times asking, well, is this okay if I do this? Is this okay if I do this? Uh, that's just not efficient for me at all. You know, I
Yeah.
want to be able to sit down at a drawing with confidence. I know what this person wants and I can give that to them.
Yeah. Um, so let's go back to family life a little bit. You mentioned, one of your children living with some ongoing health concerns.
Yeah.
How has that, if at all, how has that changed or impacted the way you work, the way you run your business, the way that you operate professionally?
Family's priority.
Yeah.
You know, it was when they're born, but once we discovered my daughter needed heart surgery, it changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing else mattered. You know, it was everything else kind of just disappeared. Of my love for tattooing, everything. Like it went through this little period where I didn't want to go into the shop because it just wasn't important in comparison.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people's tattoos, while it may be the most important thing to them at their time and it could help them heal, it could help them do whatever, they're getting that tattoo for whatever reason they are, it doesn't matter because my daughter is the number one priority. So she went through her heart surgery January this year. And, we get a little bit of a break for a while. But even now, like, yeah, I don't know, that time's precious, man. Like when I'm with them, nothing else matters. It
Yeah.
just doesn't matter. So uh, I've made a conscious effort that when I'm with them, the phone goes down. You know, I'm not talking to customers. I'm not looking at Instagram. I mean, everybody's guilty of it, but that is hyper focused time on them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and but yeah, tattooing was everything to me for over 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
It consumed every aspect. Everything else disappeared. My kids have replaced that feeling entirely.
Yeah. So I know you have such a priority on family. How do you keep rough business days from impacting what happens when you come home?
So when we had our shop in Parksville, we lived less than 2 minutes from the shop. And, we had two newborn twins,
Mm-hmm.
and twins are gnarly. Like it's a wild road in that first 6 months,
Yeah.
and, I'd be at work and there'd be a gnarly day and I'd drive the 30 seconds home, walk in the door and you're thrown into just pure chaos with the kids.
Yeah.
I need a separation. I need a distance, if I'm at the shop. So right now, I live about 20 to 30 minutes away. And that distance has been great for me because that drive, if you've had a bad day with a customer and he was a total asshole or whatever the case may be, or things just didn't go the way you were expecting that day, I have 20 to 30 minutes to just sit in the car, turn on some loud music and get in dad mode. Because what happened at the shop, that doesn't matter to my kids. It doesn't matter to them. I could tell them, oh, dad had a bad day. And instantly they just want to cheer you up. They just want to spend time with you and have a good time. So that distance between the shop and home is absolutely needed for me. And same thing, like I could be at home having a rough time with the kids and they're just being unforgiving and unrelenting and in chaos at home. The customer at work also doesn't deserve that. They're paying for a good experience for their tattoo. So when I'm driving to the shop, it's time to let go and get in tattoo shop customer service mode. That's been crucial for me is keeping that separation.
Yeah, that 2-minute window, like that would be really hard to make that switch over. But that 20, 30 minutes allows you to kind of like switch over into the different spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really helped with my home life as well, because back when we had Parksville Tattoo, being only like a minute from the shop, it's very easy to like oh, I got to run to the shop. I forgot something, or I forgot to check if we had paper towel or whatever. And when you're in there, it's very easy to spend 2 hours bullshitting,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? And with the distance that I have here now, I can't just run to the shop lickety split and be back quick. Like
Mhm.
it's got to be something important, and nothing's that important anymore, honestly.
Yeah.
It can wait.
So again, going with the theme of family, I know a lot of professionals experience this, but especially small business owners, where your work becomes so all-consuming because it almost is like my business is who I am.
Mhm.
You've made a real focus on that, but you've also been with your partner since you were very, very young. How
Yeah.
have you been able to prioritize your relationship throughout as you've been building this business?
Well, it's kind of gone in waves.
Mhm.
She's been extremely understanding about my hyper obsessiveness about tattooing in the beginning.
Mhm.
Um, she was very supportive, but one thing that sticks out to me is there was one year uh, where I was really trying to figure out how to paint tattoo flash, and I was just so consumed in what I was doing that she kept track of the days I didn't go in the shop. And I think it was between May and October, November, she counted 4 days where I didn't go in the tattoo shop. And that really hit me. One, it didn't feel like I worked that much because I was enjoying it, like it was
Mhm.
just all I wanted to do.
Mhm.
And two, it hit me because she kept track of it. So obviously it meant something to her
Yeah.
that I was gone so much,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, well, now it's time to refocus and reprioritize.
Mm.
Um, she's been, I wouldn't be tattooing if it wasn't for my wife. I owe her everything. And
Yeah.
her support has been like no other person on the planet. But now that I have the family, it's totally shifted.
Yeah.
You know, I know she would never ask me to spend more time at home
Mhm.
because I love what I do. And that's just
Mhm.
how she is. She's amazing. She would let
Mhm.
me dive into this tattoo world even more, even with kids at home. She would never ask me. But it's they're more important now than tattooing.
Yeah.
So she doesn't have to,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Makes perfect
Um,
sense.
yeah, my job when I come home, it's almost like the relief, especially with twins. Like if she's having a rough day, the moment you walk in, it's like, okay, go take a breather. I got this, dad mode. Um, I can handle this.
Mhm.
It's a very give and take thing, but my wife has been very understanding with the tattoo world and has encouraged me to pursue it further. Where in parts I feel like I'm kind of holding back to stay with the family more
Mhm.
because it is more important to me at this point.
Yeah, yeah, totally, man. All
Yeah.
right. So as we're heading to the close of the interview, is there anything that you want to touch base on?
Oh man, not a ton. Not a ton. Sorry. I mean, it's been a lot of rambling on my parts. Hopefully it was a little helpful, but
Oh man, you
you know,
killed it. You killed it,
you
man.
know, one big thing that I'm really hoping changing in tattooing is people voicing and standing up for what they believe in, regardless of what
Yeah.
that is. It seems like a lot of people are too scared to speak up, and with the events of 2020, with a lot of tattooers being called out, um, it seems like people are still scared to voice their opinions and be vocal about it. And I'm hoping that'll change,
Mhm.
um, and standing by what they're saying as well.
Mhm.
I mean, we
Yeah.
we went over that earlier, but uh, yeah,
Well, and anything that has like a cool factor, right? So it's like, as an example, music. Tons of people want to be musicians or work in music, right? And it's like it's limited real estate. You only have so much real estate. If you think of real estate, it's like audience attention. How many records people are going to buy? How many concerts are going to go to? How many articles are going to be written about bands? It's not limitless. It's actually quite limited per year,
yeah,
like how much space people have. And like people eke out these little spaces, whether it's in tattooing or music or whatever artistic thing or whatever cool thing that people are a part of. And the if it's this or nothing kind of mindset, it's like I'm in music or I'm in tattooing or nothing. I'll have to go get a real job.
yeah,
That fear of losing something, it keeps people quiet. And I totally understand it. I totally get it.
yeah,
People bust their asses. They get to this place. And maybe you're not just sitting there quiet, like, well, I'm not going to say something. Maybe you got blinders on. Maybe you don't want to see. Maybe the people
yeah,
around you are just really good at hiding it. I totally I think you totally get it. But like, how cool is a culture? Like, how worthwhile is something if you have to compromise in ways that put other people in harm's way? And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people, their silence comes from a place of they're worried about their own career.
mm-hmm,
They're worried about stepping on toes. And while I understand that aspect, I don't agree with it. I think if you love something, you should do everything you can to protect it and show its value for what you see it as. If you're worried about your company looking bad, or you're worried about your shop going under because you were vocal about something you're passionate about, um, I mean, maybe you're focusing on the wrong things. Like, I love tattooing. I think it's amazing, but do I agree with certain tattooers still working and being busy after certain events in 2020? Absolutely not. I think people should be vocal and say, you don't belong in this space. You blew it.
mm-hmm.
You know,
Oh
you,
yeah.
there's no seat at the table for you anymore. You had your chance and you fucked it up. And a lot of people don't want to say that
Mm-hmm.
because they're whatever repercussions or whatever. Who knows their reasons? I don't agree with it. I think tattooers need to start being more vocal about conventions, about certain tattoo shops, about certain tattooers. I think they need to be honest and open about the experience that they're having, whether it's from their customers' perspective or from their own being in the shop or being at the convention. I think they need to be honest about it and let people decide. That to me is everything. But without the tattooers in the industry, especially the males, advocating for these things, it's never going to change. It's
Totally.
never going to change.
Totally. All right. So as we're closing off, I'm going to ask you 3 questions.
Okay.
But before we get to the 3 questions, is there anything you want to hype up? Where can people find you? Where can they find the shop? Just tell us about all the details.
Yeah, so the shop is located just outside Kensington, like historical Kensington in Calgary, on 14th Street. If you want to reach me for a tattoo, best way to do is email me. You'll get in touch with my wife. Please be respectful and of her time as well. She'll handle you as best as possible, and then we'll sit down and we'll talk about a tattoo. But also please check out Katie. She is a new tattooer at the shop. She's a great young tattooer doing amazing tattoos. I wish my tattoos were that clean a year and a half in. I think it's grizzly.inc. Inks on Instagram. You'll be able to find her easily. But go show her some love because she's been really, really crushing it.
Okay, awesome. And we'll add all the links in to this
Perfect.
as well. Make sure we got all that. All right, here are your 3 questions. They're going to be tough,
Okay.
so get ready.
Okay.
Get ready. All right. 3 tattooers who have either directly or indirectly influenced you.
Okay. Absolute number one above all is Bob Roberts. Bob Roberts owns a shop in Los Angeles called Spotlight Tattoo. It's been around a long time. He has recently passed, and I was lucky enough to be able to go down there and work with them, enjoy some time with him at his house. He is above all my main influence in tattooing, my main inspiration, everything. Bob was extremely honest. He was extremely encouraging, and even at his age, he was curious about doing things other ways. No other person's work impacted me the way Bob's did. I was tracing his designs before I even knew who he was. There's something about the power and the movement in his tattoos that I just don't see anywhere else. And the tattoo world lost to me, the best there is, and the best they'll ever do it was Bob Roberts. Wow. As far as the other 2, I will always first and foremost give credit to 2 of my mentors through tattooing. I didn't start with them, but I credit them with everything. The first one is Lucas Ford. He owns a tattoo supply company called Good Guys Supply. I credit Lucas with teaching me how to tattoo from the technical side. He was very amazing with answering any questions I had, especially when it kept getting into smaller and smaller details of those things. He was able to answer them or point me in the right direction, which I am forever grateful for. And my other mentor, Sean Headley, he owns a tattoo shop up in Edmonton called Champion Tattoo. I credit Headley with teaching me how to be a tattooer. I think they are 2 very different things. And he really taught me how to talk with people and customers and make them feel comfortable. And it's not about you; it's about them. Give them what they want, um, and how you present yourself online, and you can still be this good, fun dude, you know, uh, and enjoy your job, and still have this kind of authority in the shop, like what you're doing, and with the confidence. And I learned a lot from those two people. I credit them with everything for my career.
Heck yeah. All right.
Yeah,
Second question. So we've talked a lot about mentorship here. Um, Apprenticeships when it comes to tattooing, like,
yeah,
people are looking to get in. It's interesting though, because if you find someone to apprentice under and they're assholes or they suck or maybe they have bad morals or whatever it is, it can really screw up your life, screw up your career, screw up your
oh
outlook.
yeah.
So what advice do you have for people looking to develop into tattoo artists when they're looking for an apprenticeship?
So the biggest advice I could tell anybody who wants to get into tattooing, wants to look for an apprenticeship, is get tattooed.
Mm.
That's the main thing. It's very unlikely somebody's going to give you the gift of tattooing and the craft of tattooing if you've never spent money in their business or supported them in any way, or recognizable. It's a very intimate relationship between apprentice and mentor, and you guys have to really know if you get along. If you're spending a lot of time in that chair and getting tattooed, you can get a read on somebody. Could you spend a lot of time with this person? Um, that is my main thing, is make yourself known around that shop. People really have to stop sending Instagram messages being like, are you looking for an apprentice? That is not the way to do it. Please stop doing that. um, you have to be familiar, be inside, get in the shop, spend some money, support their business. They might say no, but they're not going to give it to a stranger. Not only that, draw way more than you think you have to. The bar is set so high right now. There's tattooers that have been tattooing 6 months that blow me out of the water. And, if you want to get into it, you have to show that you can bring some value to it as well. Draw. That is the main thing for new apprentices or anybody looking into it. And, take your portfolio, take your book to the person you would like to learn from and ask them to critique you. Get some good solid advice on what you're doing wrong, what you're doing right, and take that advice and show them that you can apply it. That you didn't just waste their time and they just wasted their breath on you. Take that information and do something with it. Bring it back in a month. Show them what you did. Ask for another critique. You really have to become familiar. I don't think this whole, it doesn't matter who I apprentice as long as I charge them 10 grand, you can apprentice. I don't agree with it. It's a very intimate thing, the one-on-one aspect of that tattoo world. And there's a lot of people who are doing it right, but there's a lot of people who are doing it wrong. But the person who are walking in looking for that apprenticeship, don't even ask when you're still a stranger.
Yeah.
Become familiar.
All right. Final question. From your perspective, someone who's been in the game for a while and also has a lot of runway to keep going, what's the most important element of being able to work in this industry successfully for a long time and keep a good name?
Oh, realize that it has very little to do with you. Mm-hmm. You're not special. If COVID showed me anything, we are expendable. The world could, snap of a finger, disappear every tattooer, and it wouldn't make a difference. We're very lucky to do what we're doing. Just let your ego go. It's not about you. You're not the one who has to wear the tattoo. Put the customer first. Make sure that they know what they're getting into. Do your job and give them well-informed information so they can make a well-informed decision. And the rest is up to them. But as long as you do that, anyone could have a long career in tattooing. It's the assholes who only worry about themselves and want to be artists that they're not going to have a nice long career. I mean, they could, but the chances of them staying busy for a long distance at a time are pretty slim. Your customers are everything. Before the internet, there was word of mouth. If you did a good tattoo, it was 10 people heard about it. You do a bad one, 100 people hear about it. Yeah. It's just how it works. So treat the customer as best as possible. treat them how you want to be treated.
Mhm.
I've had experiences going to tattoo shops where it's like there was this fantasy idea of what it was going to be like, and it was fucking horrible. Like, and every time I look at that tattoo, that's what I think of.
Mm.
Like, fuck, I didn't even care if what it was or how it turned out. I just couldn't wait to get the fuck out of there. It's not about you. Just put the customer first. Let them get what they want and walk out the door happy. Put a smile on their face. That's the only thing you should be focusing on. All the rest of it is absolute bullshit. All
Mm.
the clicks, groups, sponsorships, conventions, invites, none of it matters. It's the one-on-one with the customer. Focus on the micro, and eventually you'll have the macro, period.
Hell yeah, man. Awesome. Well, Ryan, this has been an incredible conversation. Thanks so much for your time. Anything you want to say before we close off?
Just thank you very much for having me, man.
Hell yeah. You totally rule. So hello from Monica. And we'll be in Calgary in the summer. So I hope to see you soon. Everyone else will
Absolutely.
see you in the outro. And Spencer, drop the beat.